I told you that we were going to sing soon. Well, it turned out that this is it. We're here to learn Greek chorus. Now, couldn't get any help. Couldn't get any camera people to help me, and they threatened to leave, and the film would go blank, so I'll do it by myself. And they may leave anyway. This is a chorus, Prepi oli na vekthun. Now, that means it is necessary for everyone to know. Now, this little na here tells you that this is an infinitive. It is necessary for everyone to know, or everybody ought to know. Now, you know that one. Is everybody ought to know, everybody ought to know, everybody ought to know Jesus. Now, that's all that says. The whole thing there. It is necessary for everyone to know Jesus. Then, he is the lily of the valley, the star, the shining one. So it's the shining star. He also is the light of the world. Everybody ought to know, and we have a little different word for know there. Okay? Are you all ready? Here's the way it goes. Prepi oli na vekthun, prepi oli na vekthun, prepi oli na vekthun, Tony soon. Prepi oli na vekthun, prepi oli na vekthun, prepi oli na vekthun, Tony soon. Inokrinos tikiladas, do asterito lambro, ineketofos tu cosmu, prepis olus natopo. Then you go ahead and do the rest of it. I won't do it anymore. Camera people are covering their ears and all that. But this is the kind of thing you can do with modern pronunciation. These things are available to us. We have a whole chorus book of those, and so many other things that we can do. This is just one little thing that we thought would liven up the set today. Now we're going to look at lesson 11, the imperfect active indicative. This is Machen, chapter 64, or page 64, chapter 11. The imperfect indicative of imi is also in this chapter. Now, the vocabulary is ero, I take up, I take away. Ero, I take up, I take away. Anaveno, I go up. Ana means up, veno, go, I go up. Apothnisko, I die. Hear that? Apothnisko, I die. Apaktino, I kill. Apostello, I send. Artos, a piece of bread or a loaf of bread. Veno, I go. Now, veno doesn't occur in the New Testament, but the compounded forms do. And so we had to learn veno in order to know what it means when we see ana or kata and so forth with it. So veno, I go. Astheo, I eat. Kata with the genitive against, with the accusative according to. Kata veno, I go down. Then men and that. Now you see those dots in between men and that? That means that there are words in between. So men introducing one clause, and then the clause, and then that, another clause. We'll see how that works in just a moment, but on the one hand, I do this. On the other, I do this. That's the translation of men and that. Uketi is an adverb meaning no longer. Para with the genitive from, with the dative beside, with the accusative alongside of. So now we have our first preposition that can take all three cases, genitive, dative, accusative. Paralambano, I receive or I take along. And then sin with the dative with. Sinago, I gather together. And tote, adverb then. Now those are the vocabularies. We have two sets of forms in this chapter. Not very much otherwise, just a couple of things to do besides vocabulary and forms. The forms I have on the board, and you'll see them in paragraphs 123 and 133. 123, 133. I have them over here on the board. You see the forms of Elion. This is the imperfect of imi, of Leo. You see the present stem in there, and we have in there an augment, and we'll look how to do that in a moment, an augment, a present stem, a variable vowel, and then the endings. So the endings are here and here. Now, the reason I made that dotted is because we don't learn just that. It's kind of hard to say, if you want to learn them by rote, it'd be hard to say, and then a blank, what do you do with that? A little hard. So what we do is bring the variable vowel with it in order to make a sound. So we will learn it with the endings that way, but we have to understand that is the variable vowel. So we have really a ni, a sigma, and a blank as far as endings go in this secondary tense. So it would go Elion, Elias, Elia, Eliomen, Eliate, and Elion. Or on, es, omen, et the on. The tape will have it just that way. Learn it that way. On, es, omen, et the on. Then in paragraph 133, we have the imperfect of me, or I was. I was, you were, he was. And the forms are here. Imin, is-in, imen, ita, isan. And they're pretty regular in some cases. Part of these will look very much like the normal secondary endings. So this is the imperfect of me, I was. Now, the translation and the meaning of this, of the imperfect, is best seen, I think, by comparison with the present. Before we had Leo, and Leo means I loose, or I am loosing. Now, it could mean both of those. Well, in the past time, the I loose will be a different form, and I am loosing will call for a different form. So in the past it will be, if you want to make I am loosing past, it would be I was loosing. I was loosing. So the past of the continuation is I was loosing. Now, in a few chapters from now, we will get the past of the point. It will simply be I loosed, and that will be in another tense. That will be the aorist tense. So I loosed will be aorist. What we're looking at now is the imperfect. Imperfect right here. I was loosing. So that's the translation. I was loosing, and the was will tell you it's the past, and the participle form there will tell you that it's a continuation in past time. Now we need to look at the workbook now to get the forms on that sheet. Remember the sheet we had of we had the verbs in the primary. We had the present, we had the active, middle, and passive. I trust, this is page 23. I trust that you've got these filled in. These are primary endings, primary tenses. All of these will be. Now we're over here with the secondary. We're getting the imperfect, which is the first of the secondary tenses. We have active in this one. If you put those forms that we just talked about, paragraph 123, in here. Elion, es, and then omen, ete, on. Fill that in right in here, and that will remind you that here's a secondary tense. It has secondary endings, different endings from the present. Now, the characteristics of the imperfect, let me point out here where they go. The imperfect tense, you put the verb on this line, just right here, and then we'll put the name of the parts of it right here. So watch on the board as we show you what to put in there. Elion. Now, those parts are, this is called augment. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Augment. Augment tells you having a past time. Then you have the present stem, the variable vowel, which is the same as we've had before, and the secondary active endings. Secondary active endings. So you have augment, present stem, variable vowel, secondary active endings. You'll put that on page 24 of the workbook. Now, we've done about everything we need to do in this chapter except the augmenting. How do you put the augment on? This right here. Well, we'll see that in the flip chart over here. This is paragraph 125, 126, and 131 in Machen. Now, all he says here is that if the verb that you're putting an augment on begins with a consonant, if it begins with a consonant, you will put an epsilon. The augment will consist of an epsilon. Just the epsilon on front of the verb that begins with a consonant. In this case, li is the stem. If it begins with a consonant, put an epsilon on. That's the augment. If it begins with a vowel, then you will lengthen that vowel from the alpha and epsilon both lengthening to eta. Alpha lengthened to eta, so the present form of akuo is here, akuo, but the imperfect will be ikuon, ikuon. Now the alpha then has been lengthened to eta, and then the secondary endings have been put on. If it were beginning with omicron, ophilo, it would be ophilo with the omega, because the omega is the long of the omicron. So you'll lengthen the vowel. If the verb stem begins with a vowel, lengthen that vowel. Alpha epsilon to eta and omicron to omega. Now the compounds. Compounds are a little bit harder. If a verb is made up of both verb form and preposition, then you have a certain process by which to do this. First of all, you take off the preposition and treat it like it were a just plain old verb, a simple verb. Then you augment it according to paragraphs 125 or 126, meaning that if that stem that you have left begins with a consonant, then you would add an epsilon. If it begins with a vowel, then you lengthen that vowel, augment that way. Then you replace the preposition. Now, with ek valo, we took the ek off. We, according to paragraph 125, augmented with the epsilon. And then when we put the valo back on, we have the kappa now coming before a vowel, and kappa before a vowel becomes xi. So it's a little bit of a problem there, but that's all. It's just a regular order of things that you already know about from the workbook. So when you put this back on, it becomes xi instead of kappa. This will work for all words. Maybe we can look at a couple of words in your book. On page 65 of Machen, you see paragraph 125. He gives the illustration from Yinosko, a Yinosko, right? 125. Then 126, he gives a Yiro, Iron, and Akuo, Ikuon. Now look at Ero. You have ero, and then the alpha becomes eta, and see the little iota subscript there? The iota does not disappear. It rarely disappears in any kind of contraction. It will become subscript. So it became subscript under the eta. So it's iron. Then paragraph 131, he uses valo, ek valo, and then he uses apaktino, apektinon. And for apago, he uses apigon. So the augmenting is fairly simple if you just follow those steps for the compound, and then you can augment any word that you have going. Now on the exam, if you are taking this for credit, you'll get an exam, you will have to take a present tense and turn it into an imperfect. We need to do this with to let you make sure you know what you're doing there. So we'll give you a few words, maybe 4 or 5 on the exam, and you will turn those into imperfects. And of course there'll be some of each kind there. After that, we'll go on to lesson 12, and we'll get the middle and passive of the imperfect, and learn some more interesting things about Greek.